Hello everyone, this is part 33 of What If Naruto Was Adopted by Kakashi, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Naruto was feeling great and very relieved at the same time. This day had not gone the way he had thought it would. Finding his dad in a coma had been one of the worst moments he could remember, but soon it had fixed him up. Still, that had been one hell of a bad time and he had been genuinely worried there the entire time. I'm glad that Kakashi-sensei will be okay, Sakura commented with a sigh of relief. She was walking with Naruto as well as Sasuke and Hinata. I'm not sure what we would do if something had happened to him. Yeah, no kidding, Naruto said in a more serious tone and looked at Sasuke. Sasuke, your brothers are ass. Sasuke only gave a small grunt as an affirmative. Naruto wasn't telling him anything he didn't already know. Although Sasuke was marking this down as yet another reason he needed to hunt his brother down and end him for good. The man had killed his clan and family and now attacked his sensei. If he didn't know any better, he would swear that Itachi was trying to make this even more personal. I'm glad he's okay. Sasuke knew full well what might have happened. He had gone through that same thing himself. Just the memory of it made him clench his jaw. He had been out of it for days before he woke up, and when he had, the entire world had changed for him and would never be the same again. A part of him died that night so long ago and his childhood had ended back then. He was glad that Naruto wouldn't have to go through the pain of losing family like that. Watching them die before you and being completely helpless to change it was like acid in your stomach. It just ate away at you slowly over time. Thanks. Naruto nodded his head. The four of them came to a fork in the road as they stopped. Well, I got to go this way, Sasuke said, going to the left. It had been one long trip and he felt physically and mentally tired after everything. I'll go with him, Sakura told Naruto as she didn't want to be a third wheel between Naruto and Hinata. She knew that Naruto had been eager to see her and she could bet that Hinata was the same. So she used this as an excuse to leave them alone as she caught up with Sasuke. She got in step with Sasuke and looked over her shoulder, seeing Naruto and Hinata walk off together. She sighed, kind of envious of the relationship. Hope they have a good time because this is the long way home for me. Sasuke glanced at her and then back at the two behind. Knowing him, he might already be trying something. He better not try something too bad, Sakura said dryly. Given how he talked about her father chasing him around the city one night because of a misunderstanding. Sasuke gave a small grunt of a laugh, remembering hearing about that. He would have liked to have seen that in person. Sakura gave a small smile, glad to see his mood breaking slightly. Honestly, she got worried about him at times. All this repressing his anger couldn't be healthy, but now that Kakashi was out of danger, she had time to think about it. Itachi had nearly taken away her sensei. Not only that, she had known him as long as she had known Naruto. He had always been Naruto's dad, longer than sensei to her. She remembered him talking with her parents when he brought Naruto over to her birthday back in their younger days, and he had always been interesting to say the least. She couldn't help but feel a bit of anger towards Itachi now and what had nearly happened because of him. Naruto's right about your brother, she commented eventually. Tell me about it, Sasuke said in a dark tone. Just another reason for me to stop him. Well, you can count me and Naruto in on that, she told him sternly. He got into our village and attacked Leaf Ninja. It's personal, Sakura. And it's not for us. Sasuke didn't want to start an argument here in the middle of the street, and thankfully it looked like an intersection up ahead. He knew where she lived, so she would have to go left while he could just go right and hopefully end this here. He really didn't want to get into anything at the moment, he just wanted to get home and rest up. I'm going this way, he simply said as he took his own path. Sakura stopped and considered going with him, but she really should get home as she bet her parents were worried about her by this time. She had been gone from the village for a long time and she couldn't give them any messages that she was okay. But she was still worried about Sasuke, even though he was making it clear he didn't want to talk about it. Sakura sighed, knowing she wasn't going to get anywhere with him today. She just wished that he would realize he didn't have to do everything alone. Back with Naruto and Hinata, Naruto was busy talking animatedly about the whole mission in his usual flamboyant fashion. Hinata smiled as she listened to him go on. After all this time away, she was just glad that he was back. She listened in on all the things they had to get through just to find Tsunade, and by the time they got back to Naruto's home they had gotten to the part of his training in a new jutsu. So did you finish it? Hinata asked him as they got to the front door. Oh, you bet I did. Naruto grinned as he couldn't wait to show it off. Hey, since my dad is going to be in the hospital for a bit, how about I come over tomorrow and show you? You guys got that large training area, so we can use that, right? Hinata thought about it, and although it was a family training area for the clan, she could make sure that they could use it. I don't see a problem. Great. He suddenly remembered something else he wanted to do since he got back. He did a quick look around just in case and then quickly pulled his back down. Hinata's eyes widened as she felt his lips on hers as he kissed her for the first time since he left. Hinata felt her face heat up as her heart rate increased to the point she thought it might pass out. Naruto pulled back, smiling at her before pulling his mask back up. He had been wanting to do that for a while now and he couldn't stop himself any longer. So I'll see you tomorrow, right? Okay, Hinata said, feeling very lightheaded at the moment. Great, I'll come over tomorrow then. Naruto waved her goodbye as she gave her idle wave back, watching him go into his home. Okay, she repeated as she seemed to move almost in automatic with a blissful smile on her face. She walked home in a pleasant daze, enjoying the sensation on her lips as the phantom feeling of Naruto's lips on hers slowly faded away. She walked right through the main gate of the Hyuga compound, not noticing anything as she was lost in her own happy world. It wasn't until Hanabi saw her older sister walking towards her, the young Hyuga noticed the odd behavior of her sister, but she did seem happy. Her young mind could only think of one thing that could get her older sister this happy. Naruto is back, I see, she simply stated. That managed to get Hinata out of her daydreaming as she noticed her sister. I said that Naruto is back since you're so happy today. Hanabi could see her sister start to blush slightly as Hanabi only raised one of her eyebrows slightly. Apparently she was right, but she was glad he was back. Things were too quiet around here and a bit dull when he wasn't around. Konohamaru and his friends did help, but Naruto seemed to bring excitement with him. Although some adults would say he brought chaos with him, but that was a matter of perspective. Oh yes, he got back today and Kakashi-sensei is also well now. Hanabi was surprised to hear that, but glad for Naruto's sake that his father would be okay. I should tell Konohamaru-kun about all of this next time I see him. Well, I was going to ask father permission to use the training grounds here tomorrow for Naruto-kun. He had a new jutsu he wanted to show off that he learned on his mission. Hanabi was interested in what it was, but Hinata didn't know for sure as Naruto never named the jutsu. But he seemed pretty excited about it, so it must be something really good. The two sisters decided to see their father together as they walked through the mansion. They asked around and found that he was in his study with their uncle. Now most would think that because of the Byakugan the Hyuga could just look through everywhere for someone. That was a major misconception of the village. It was because of this that there was a rule that unless in emergencies you were not to use the bloodline while inside of the buildings. Outside of training areas they weren't supposed to use it. It was just so that everyone had privacy. When you were in a clan of people that could see through walls, privacy was something everyone wanted. The last thing you needed was to constantly worry that someone was misusing the bloodline ability to spy on others. They knocked on the door and waited as they had been taught. If their father was too busy he would say as much, but would allow them in if he had a moment of free time. As head of the clan he had a lot of responsibilities, so he was kept busy some days. They heard their father bid them to enter as Hinata slid open the door and closed it behind them. Both sisters walked in unison as they both bowed the same way as they stood before their father. He was behind his thick wood desk that had papers on it for various matters. They could range from repair costs, supply requests, those submitting children to join the Ninja Academy, reports on clan supplies, incident reports. There were many different types as Hinata knew. Her father took time now and then to show his daughters what it took to run the clan. It wasn't anything in depth as he would save that for when they were older and to the one that would lead the clan. But he wanted his daughters somewhat familiar with how the clan worked before that time. Now they stood before him as a mirror image of their uncle stood next to them. Both were identical except for the headband that was around his head that all branch members wore to hide the seal on their foreheads. Yes, their father was straight and to the point. Hinata bowed again before speaking as was customary. I wanted to request that the training grounds to be reserved for tea tomorrow. She hated stuttering in front of her father, but she felt very nervous when she was being so official with him. Oh, why is that? Her father was slightly interested as she had never requested time, usually she just went whenever it wasn't in use. And Naruto-kun is back and he wants to show a new jutsu he learned while on his mission. Hiyashi sat back a moment. He knew that Naruto had been with Jiraiya himself and had most likely learned something from him. That would be interesting to see, not to mention that if Naruto wanted to officially court his daughter he would have to prove himself to the elders. Not an easy task, but it could be used to his advantage. Although he still wasn't sure he liked the boy dating his daughter, sure he liked the boy well enough, when the boy wasn't causing mischief or mayhem, that is. But this was his daughter after all, but as his own brother pointed out, Hinata was happy with the boy, so he would bite his tongue until he had to step in. Very well, we'll reserve time for it, but what of his father? The last I heard he was still in a coma. Kakashi-sensei woke up today with the help of Lady Tsunade, Hinata reported. Oh, so she has returned then? Hiyashi looked to his twin brother as he could tell that a new leader for the village had to be on the way. There was a rumor that the third was stepping down and handing it over to one of his students. I was wondering if I could invite Konohamaru-kun and his friends, Hanabi put in. He close to Naruto and would like to see him as well. Hiyashi nodded his head towards his youngest, giving his consent. Is that everything? Yes, father, both girls said together. Good, you may leave and I'll see you both at dinner tonight. Hiyashi watched them leave before putting down his papers. This should be interesting, Hisashi commented with a small smile. Knowing that boy, he'll be showing us something interesting. That boy is anything but predictable, Hiyashi told his brother before going back to work. He just hoped that whatever the boy planned on showing them wouldn't cause some kind of damage to the area. It got expensive to repair, and this was a boy that could employ exploding shadow clones of all things. Konoha Hospital. Hiruzen and Sarutobi had been around for nearly 70 years, and at this moment he felt every minute of it. He was still in his own hospital room as Tsunade was using a chakra skill to look over his injuries he had gotten from his battle with Orochimaru. He had been stuck in this room ever since the attack, as his injuries prevented him from moving around much. How is it? He asked her when she removed her hands from his chest, seeing the blue glow fade away. You have spinal damage, as I bet you've been informed. He nodded as he couldn't feel much of his legs and could barely move them. There are still things even I can't heal. She wanted to add in that maybe if she had been here she could have done a better job of his injuries than whoever had worked on him. That isn't to say that whoever it was did a bad job, it's just that she knew she would have done better. After checking out the injuries, only his spine was the thing that really concerned her. With surgery I could help, but I can't cure the amount of damage, she told him. Being upfront to a patient was something she believed in. The patient should know everything that they were in store for, as she went on. Even if I can react some of the nerves through chakra, I can't fix them all. Since the time of the injury, some parts of the damaged nerves have died or are too damaged for me to do anything. If this works, you'll only get partial movement again, and you would need months of rehab to learn how to walk. Even after all of this, you'll never be able to run, jump or move very quickly. You also might need a cane to get around. Sarutobi sighed, hearing all that, as the doctors earlier had told him that the sword wound he got from Orochimaru had been very damaging. Although at least Tsunade was telling him he might walk again on his own, but it was just as he knew it would be. His ninja career was over for now, there would be no coming back from this, which was why he had Jiraiya get Tsunade back here. I see, well, I was prepared for the worst. He looked at his student, and although she had on that illusion of her younger self, there was a feeling of age about her. Her eyes were older than her 20-something appearance and in the way she moved. But there was something new in her, a fire that he hadn't seen in her in a long time seemed to be back. He smiled at her, glad to see the return of the old Tsunade that seemed to be back. It's good that you returned, and it seems that a certain weight has been lifted off your shoulders. Humph, maybe so, she grinned slightly, looking out at the village. So I'm going to be looking over this whole place soon. I could think of no one better. She reached for the amulet around her neck, thinking on that. Sometimes she though this necklace was cursed, and that whoever she gave it to who said they were going to be Hokage it killed. Maybe because they were unworthy or some other strange reason. Looking back, she realized it was just a necklace and that it didn't have that kind of power. It was her own fears playing on her mind, she could see that now. Looking over the villagers, she thought about all the lives that rested in her hand, but she was a medic, she was used to that. Plus there might just be one more person that she might be able to entrust the future of the village to. The same loud-mouthed little boy that had stood up to her and helped show her what it meant to be Hokage through his words and actions. I have to admit that there was a time I thought I never wanted to come back here. Glad that things changed then, he smiled. Or should I say good that a certain someone helped. Whose idea was it to send the brat anyway? Who do you think? Tsunade shook her head. She should have known that it had been Jiraiya's idea. Although what makes you think he had anything to do with my mood change? He gave her a knowing smile in return. He said that Naruto has a special way with people, and I have to admit he does. The situation with Gaara of the Sand, for instance, comes to mind, and he was also resulted in another matter with a rogue ninja. He wanted to say more, but you never knew at times who was listening, even in the village. Anyways, he knew the real story of Zabuza and that the man was actually still alive in the country of Wave. If she wanted to know more, she could always look up the sealed reports that only the Hokage could get into, which would be her right soon enough. He does seem to have something about him. Tsunade nodded her head in agreement. In fact, the entire team impressed me. Faced with overwhelming odds, and they pulled together and didn't hesitate. You should read the reports on them in the Chunin exams. They all performed very well, and also in the battle after it. Kakashi once told me he wanted to make the next team that would be this generation's Sannin. Oh really? Tsunade raised an eyebrow at that comment. Of course he was just trying to put himself on the team, but if he's going to make such a claim, he better well damn do his best to pull it off. The old man grinned. He hadn't been fooled by Kakashi's boast, but he let the man run with it. So far it was proving most interesting, and the results, he had to admit, showed some promise. Well, the brat certainly has unique qualities about him. She grinned, looking out the window, thinking of her old team and this young one. She couldn't help but see some of the similarities in them, but they were still very unique. The Uchiha boy showed some impressive skills with his bloodline and combat abilities. While not the same type as his brother, I think with the proper training he could be a great ninja. The girl Sakura, she's shown a remarkable aptitude with the more subtle arts of using chakra. Oh really? He thought back about her and what he could remember in her file. She has been shown to be very good with manipulation of chakra. Good. She's already got some basics down of medical jutsu, and she did the tree climbing in one go. She told him. That brings me back. He thought back to his days as a Jonin sensei. You were the only student I could remember doing the same thing, and you were rubbing it in their noses all the while the other two were trying to catch up to you. Tsunade chuckled at her more youthful days back when the world hadn't seemed too scary, dangerous and painful. I'm thinking of taking the girl under my wing, with Shizun's help of course. I know I'll be busy, but the girl shows to be a natural to be a combat medic, and from what I heard of a few stories, those two teammates of her will need someone to patch them up after they jump in head first into the action. I thought Shizun was going to be your only apprentice. Don't get me wrong, Shizun can't be replaced, but there are some things even she could never master. She's never gotten the hold of the jutsu I learned for my strength techniques, for instance, but Sakura might have the skills needed to be able to learn it fully. Now that was a surprise for the old man, to think that maybe with some training under Jiraiya and Tsunade, and who knew who else, maybe Kakashi's boast might come into being. That would certainly be something to see. Another team that could go to the heights of the Sannin was something he thought he wouldn't see again in his lifetime. Well, now it looked like he had something interesting to look into in his new retirement. That was another thing he would have to think about. He would have to think on what to do now. Perhaps he could teach or something. He was named the professor for a reason, plus he could spend more time with his grandchild, which would be nice. You all right? Tsunade noticed him getting a little quiet all of a sudden. He only gave a small smile in reply. Just thinking about the future is all. So when is the big day for yourself? Tsunade made a face. You know I always hated ceremonies. Can't I just take the damn hat and get to work? After all, you did leave me a pretty big mess to clean up for you, old man. Tsunade, he chastised her like she was a genin again. Fine. She sighed, slightly annoyed she had to go through it all. Jiraiya is dealing with the issues now. He's supposed to get back to me later today about it. Tsunade looked over her village at some of the damage she could see. It would be repaired as buildings were easy to replace. Part of her wished she had been here. She might have been able to save some lives. She stopped herself, thinking that, for too long she had spent trapped in the past, thinking of what could have been. She knew now she couldn't change the past, only learn from it and move forward. Looking at the mountain with the faces of two of her relatives on it, she made a promise to those first two stones' faces. She promised that she would never forget the village again and she would make them proud of her as Hokage. It was an early morning and Anko grumbled as she got out of bed. It had been actually a decent night's sleep, the first she had in a while, but there was still something nagging at her. She looked at herself in the mirror before slashing some water on her face before looking back. Then she hung her head and groaned. "You stupid idiot. Why did you have to say that to him?" She moaned out. She couldn't believe she had said that to Kakashi, that she loved him. She was an idiot, she hadn't even stayed to hear any kind of answer, she just dropped that bombshell on him and left. Why did she have to go and do that right after he woke up? "You moron," she moaned again, wanting to bang her head against the sink. Why did she have to complicate their relationship so soon? So Anko did her usual morning routine, dreading what Kakashi's response would be. What if he didn't feel the same way, or worse, what if that freaked him out and spooked him away? Those kinds of thoughts depressed her more than she liked. She was just eating her cereal thinking about what could happen to her and Kakashi. This was why she never got into this kind of relationship before, she hated the kinds of feelings it brought up. But she had said it was out there, and now the ball was in Kakashi's court. With yet another sigh, she thought of other things, she needed to think of something else to get her mind off the topic. Then suddenly she did have something hit her that did spark a little interest. If she was going to suffer the drama of relationships, she wasn't going to go through this alone. Kurenai and her had made a deal after all, and maybe it was time for Kurenai to own up to her end of the bargain. It would certainly take her mind off things as she got dressed and rushed out to find her friend. It took a few hours of searching, but she did eventually find Kurenai in her team's training area. Apparently she was alone doing some personal training. This was perfect as she landed near Kurenai. "Hey, no rugrats today." Anko looked around. Apparently Naruto wanted to show off something and it turned out all the Genins are going over to the Hyuga compound, she explained to her as she stretched out a bit. "So I decided to take some time for some training. Being a Jonin sensei, I don't have the same free time for that like I used to." "Yeah, one of the reasons I never got into that," Anko said as she walked casually towards her. "So, Kakashi is going to make a full recovery." Kurenai nodded with a smile. "I know, I bet you're happy about that." Anko felt her face slightly warm up but pushed that down. Yeah, well, at any rate it is good he's going to be okay. "So, I guess there is only one thing left then." Kurenai gave a confused look at her, wondering what she was getting at. Anko smiled coyly as she gave her friend a impish look. "Oh, did someone forget our deal?" Kurenai's face suddenly went red as she remembered the deal. Since Anko toughed it out, it was now Kurenai's turn to follow through and actually ask out Asuma. Honestly, she had no idea why she had made that deal. Originally it had just been a way to get Anko out of her depression, and a part of her had hoped that when Kakashi was awake and okay that Anko would have forgotten all about it. Well, that plan was out the window. Maybe she could put it off or something, she really didn't feel up to doing it. Well, maybe when Kakashi is up and about then we can, but she never got to finish. "Oh hell no, we're doing this right now so I can see it and make sure that you actually follow through with it." Anko told her and then grabbed her arm. "And I think I saw him earlier, so you're doing it right now." "What? I can't do it now," Kurenai protested, but Anko kept dragging her along. "Oh, are you sneaking out on our deal?" Anko asked her slyly, knowing full well that Kurenai wasn't the type to just slip out of a deal, at least not straight up. Seeing that Kurenai had no real defense, Anko just dragged her along. Kurenai tried to make up more excuses like that she should clean up, but Anko just said that he had seen Kurenai in worse shape before during missions and such. For every excuse, Anko had a reply to it. It was very damn inconvenient to have a friend that worked in Konoha's intelligence branch. The woman knew too much on how to get in someone's head at times. Anko was near giddy with excitement. This was just what she needed. It was great to have someone that she could embarrass to get her mind off her own issues for a bit. She had a good feeling that Asuma would take Kurenai up on the offer of a date. It would just be priceless to see her try. Finally, Kurenai had seemed to stop trying to get out of it, most likely having run out of excuses. It took some time and a little asking around, but eventually they found him. He was walking the streets smoking one of his cigarettes as he sometimes did. "Well, there he is, now go get him, girl." Anko pushed her forward as Kurenai glared back at her. For a brief moment she was considering why she was friends with this woman when she turned her attention back to Asuma. He noticed her and gave a small smile and a nod of his head. Kurenai felt her throat dry up trying to steady herself. She could do this, she had been on dangerous missions where she had nearly died, so asking him out shouldn't be too hard. Yet her hands were still slightly clammy as her nerves were jumping. She mentally cursed herself as she got a hold of herself, chiding herself for acting like some kind of teenage girl with a crush. Granted, she really did like him, he had that bad boy look to him, yet he was very warm, kind, and he made her laugh at times as well. She took a breath and walked up to him, trying to put on a natural smile and also trying to forget that Anko was only a few feet away, obviously watching the whole thing. What am I to her? Entertainment. Kurenai darkly thought, but pushed that aside. Hey Kurenai, what's up? Hello Asuma. Kurenai was thankful her voice didn't waver at all, but it still didn't sound totally natural to her in that moment. So. How are things? She mentally slapped herself. That was the best she could think of an opener. Asuma shrugged a bit, not much. All the genins seemed to want the day off for something, most likely welcoming Naruto back. I figured with them back they would all want to catch up. So I'm pretty much a little bored. No new missions or anything lately, which I don't think we'll get until the new Hokage is put into place officially. Yeah, same thing with me, she replied and heard Anko giving a slight cough. She could tell what that meant. Get on with it already. Well, she would if Anko would stick her nose out of it. Asuma gave a slight look to Anko, wondering why she was watching them. For some reason he was about to ask her how Kakashi was, but noticed Kurenai was about to speak again. She seemed slightly nervous about something, what he had no idea. She was usually so solid and graceful all the time, and he had noticed. It was hard not to notice a woman like her, although now with the slight blush on her cheeks she seemed to go from beauty to slightly cute. Well, I was wondering if you aren't busy that we could have dinner sometime. Anko nearly burst out laughing at Asuma's expression. Poor guy looked like he had just been hit between the eyes with a hammer. It was hilarious and she kicked herself to not bringing a camera. This was a moment she should have preserved. You and me. Asuma blinked, making sure that he had heard right. Yes. Kurenai felt slightly embarrassed how this was going, as she thought that he was going to turn her down. That was something that would ruin her day. If he did, she would feel like an idiot, blame Anko, and then just find somewhere to go be alone and maybe find out if she had any ice cream left. Asuma then got a smile on his face. Sure, I would like that. You would. Kurenai wasn't sure what to say. She honestly wasn't really expecting that. Although the giant warm feeling she was getting at the fact that he said yes. Of course I would. He scratched the back of his head, looking a little nervous. I was kind of hoping you would ask. I was kind of thinking of asking you out soon, but with everything going on I never got the chance. Why, you were. Now it was her turn to be dumbfounded, and she didn't even notice Anko holding a hand over her mouth and the other over her stomach. Yeah, I was. So anywhere you wanted to go. Kurenai felt like she wanted to laugh. Here she was getting all worked up and he was going to ask her out eventually anyway. She felt like she nearly could just fall down suddenly. Finally noticing Anko's enjoyment made her think maybe it was time to cut the woman's fun short. She walked over to Asuma and gently took his arm in hers as she started to lead him away. Well, let's talk about that, just us. She gave a look to Anko that said not to follow them or else. Anko pouted and stuck her tongue out at her friend for spoiling her fun so soon. Anko watched them go and had to admit it was about time. She let out a little laugh at something that popped into her head. Oh God, Anko Mitarashi, the love guide. She shook her head at how absurd that sounded. If Kakashi heard that, he might laugh too. And now she was thinking back to that problem and groaned with her shoulders and head slumping. I need Dango, she moaned. Dango fixes everything. Hyuga compound. Naruto was excited for a few reasons, one being that he was going to see Hinata and the other he was going to show up what he had learned. This was going to be great, although which one he was more excited for he wasn't sure. He rushed over to the main gate with the two branch family members there who kept an eye on things. He never got tired of that joke as he grinned at the thought. He said hello to them, who only nodded in response. The guys on duty here were always so serious. He remembered once when he thought he would loosen them up with a small prank back when he did that stuff. They hadn't thought it funny and banned him for a week from entering the place. Honestly, some people had no sense of humor. He was sure the dye would have gotten out of their clothing after all, and it wasn't permanent to the skin. He made his way to the large opened area he knew was the personal training ground. He was hoping to find Hinata already there. Being here for years, he had a pretty good idea of the layout of the compound. The place was always so neat and orderly that he wondered if they cleaned the place every day or they just knew how to keep clean. His dad always had to get him to clean up his room. Naruto still proclaimed that it wasn't a mess, it was just ordered chaos. His dad never bought that line no matter how he tried to spin it. He got to the open space and he was surprised to see that Hinata was there, but so was a lot others. He noticed that Neji was there with his teammates. Hinata's father, uncle and younger sister were there as well. He noticed Sakura, who was with Ino and her team, and then there was also Konohamaru. What the hell is everyone doing here? Naruto yelled out, surprised. Well, I was talking to Ino and said you had this new technique you had and were going to show it off. Sakura started off a little embarrassed how it happened. She had just been catching up with Ino when she had said it. Actually, she hadn't even gotten to the point of all the new training they had gone through or the trouble, when Ino wanted to see what kind of technique. Her teammates had been there and Choji was interested. Shikamaru, however, was just along for the ride because he was bored anyway. Naruto looked to Neji and his team. Neji coughed into his fist. I might have mentioned it. Yes, and I wanted to see what Naruto-kun's new jutsu is. Lee shouted out, excited. When he had heard about it, he nearly wanted to sleep right in the compound to make sure he saw it. Neji forbade it and promised to take him himself to show it if he calmed down. Tenten was there, mainly one part curiosity and another not to be let out of the group. Well, that, and she was wondering if Sasuke would be there. He had made some comments at her that she didn't really mind. Plus, Neji seemed to get jealous and it was a unique side to him she never saw. Too bad he wasn't here, although Neji had been handing close to her the entire time. Naruto then looked to Konohamaru and Hanabi. She just shrugged, not even bothering to explain to him. She had just mentioned it yesterday to Konohamaru and he wanted to see it himself. Naruto sighed as his shoulders slumped. He was kind of hoping to impress just Hinata, but then again he still was at least. Alright then, let's do this. He found a dummy had been set up. This was a very good straw one that had line patterns in it, not to mention small dots on the lines. He knew from asking once before this was used by the Hyuga clan for helping to train in the gentle fist style. Well, if he had an audience he was going to enjoy it then, he figured. Cracking his knuckles, he made a clone as he put out one of his hands. The clone quickly got to work as the clone's hands were nearly a blur of motion as he helped to form the sphere. Everyone who hadn't seen it were very focused on it, although Hinata's father and uncle, however, they were quickly surprised. That can't be what I think it is. Hisashi couldn't believe what he was seeing. He had seen this only used by one man, and that had been years ago, nearly a lifetime ago. Hisashi activated his eyes as he took a closer look at the chakra pattern in the boy's hand. There was no mistaking it, the one jutsu that was made famous by the fourth Hokage, the original jutsu that had been made famous by him. It is, he simply told his younger twin. Soon the chakra ball was finally formed as everyone saw the pure sphere of power as he rushed forward and slammed it into the dummy. Rasengan! Naruto shouted out as it tore the dummy to pieces, shredding it and sending the pieces flying out all over the place. He quickly turned around to raise a victory sign in the air with his free hand with a triumphant yell. Oh yeah, how do you like that? The hell was that? Ino muttered, impressed by it. Man, first exploding clones and now this. Shikamaru shook his head. I swear it's like he only uses the most destructive things he can get his hands on. If he keeps this up, I don't think I want to be near him in a fight. Although it was made in a joke, he was already making plans on how to keep out of Naruto's way in case they did end up fighting together one day on a mission. It wasn't easy with how unpredictable Naruto could be at times. That was most impressive, Naruto-kun. Lee looked all fired up by the demonstration. I shall train myself even harder than ever to make up a move that can go head to head with that technique. Lee's teammates sighed in unison. It would take Lee months to get over this, that is if he did. He most likely would train himself to near death just to make a new technique that could be as impressive as what Naruto had shown them. Which meant that they would be either dragged into it with him or they would have to keep an eye on Lee to make sure he didn't overdo things too much as he usually did. It was a good thing Guy wasn't here. He would be supporting Lee and the two might have run off at that moment to get a head start. That was awesome, Naruto Naichin. Konohamaru yelled out as he looked at his idol. Can you teach me that? Maybe. I'll want to see if I can do it with only my own hands. Naruto was a bit disappointed that he needed a clone, but maybe if he could get some time with his dad and Jiraiya he could figure out a way to use it with only his hands. I really wanted something impressive, Konohamaru muttered to himself. So what do you think, Hinata-chan? Naruto asked his girlfriend. She smiled as she nodded her head. It was really impressive. I didn't know you could make a jutsu without hand seals like that. Oh yeah, it's great like that. Naruto grinned under his mask at her, although then his stomach growled. He had been so excited he had forgotten that it was close to lunch. Hinata giggled as he blushed, slightly embarrassed. Soon the Genins had decided to eat in the courtyard together as they broke into groups. Hyuga branch members helped with the food as blankets were put on the grass as the more polite ones thanked them for the hard work. Hiyashi didn't join, but he did watch from the front of the house, deep in thought as he looked at Naruto on a blanket with Hinata, Hanabi and Konohamaru. From the exaggerated gestures and the expressions on their faces, he figured that the boy was telling him about their latest mission as the younger ones looked most interested. His daughter had a worried look on her face, but it soon turned to relief. He sighed knowing that his daughter's feelings for the boy were a bit of a complication. Hyuga members, especially main branch members, usually married within the clan. There were exceptions, of course. They needed new blood now and then, but he had looked in the family history and so far there was no precedence for someone who was either the head or would take the mantle of head of their clan, had married anyone outside of the clan. He allowed the relationship knowing his daughter needed some kind of happiness, as clan life could be very hard at times, as he tried to prepare them for that as best he could. If this continued on, Naruto would have to prove himself to the elders that he was worthy to marry into the clan. To marry Hinata, well, the boy had a major battle ahead of him. Although this little show might have been the first time Hiyashi thought that the boy might have a chance to learn and use a jutsu that only a handful of people knew about, one used by the most famous and respected ninja of their village, would help. He knew that others would have seen the display and already he would bet money that word was getting around. You are in deep thought, brother. Hisashi came up behind him. Hiyashi nodded. Yes, I have a lot on my mind. I think I have a guess at what too. He followed his brother's gaze. It's nice seeing you worry about her future. Her future is tied to the whole clan, Hiyashi told him. I know I'm hard on them, but you know I have to be. I just hope she's strong enough for what's to come. Hisashi got a bit more serious as he knew what his older brother was talking about. You think they would force the issue? Yes, they would. Thankfully it's a few years off, but the elders like to plan ahead. Have they picked the candidate yet? Hiyashi shook his head. No, or I would have been informed and then asked my opinion. I can only push things away so far. When she comes of age, Naruto will have to be able to prove himself, or he will have to give up on her, or Hinata will be forced to make a very difficult choice. Hisashi sighed. Sometimes clan politics are a cruel and gruesome thing. The twin nodded. Although it was the only thing they had, it had kept the clan strong and alive in the hard times before Konoha and kept the clan going. You couldn't just get rid of generations of history, culture and tradition, but at times he wished they were easier to change. He watched his daughters enjoying themselves. If he couldn't prevent what was to come, he could at least give them small moments like this. While some of the boys were gathered together, the girls decided to get together as well, as Sakura and Ino invited Tenten to sit with them as Sakura filled them in on their adventure. Tenten was glad for it. She really didn't have any female friends her own age. Oh sure, she knew some girls from school that had been in her grade, but she never really saw them much anymore after she was put on Guy's team. It was nice to bond with other female ninja now and then. Although she couldn't believe Sakura's luck, and she pretty much said as much. This is so unfair, Tenten moaned. I can't believe you not only met Tsunade but actually spent time with her. I would kill for that. Really? Sakura asked her. Well, maybe not literally kill, but she's my idol, Tenten explained to them. She's the best female ninja of our village. Ever since I read about her, I wanted to be just like her. She's so strong and has done so much. She's proven that females can be just as good, if not better, than men at this life, and I wanted to follow in that. I trained so hard so that one day I could be seen like that one day. And now apparently she's going to be Hokage, Ino supplied to the bun-haired girl. Look on the bright side, when we get missions you can meet her all the time now. That did seem to brighten Tenten up a bit and got her looking forward to her first mission assigned by Tsunade. Well, she's interesting. Sakura didn't want to burst Tenten's bubble about Tsunade's less than stellar points, like the gambling and all the drinking. Although she is a tough teacher. How do you know that? Both girls asked. Sakura hadn't gotten to that part of her story just yet. Well, I asked if I could train under her in medical jutsu. Given my team, they need someone to look after them and watch their backs, and she agreed. What? Both girls shouted out. So you're going to get training under the Hokage? Ino couldn't believe that Sakura was getting this. Tenten moaned again, this is so unfair, I would love to be trained under her. Well, it is medical jutsu, Sakura told Tenten, seeing the slightly depressed look on her face. I mean, do you have any talent for it? You need really good chakra control. That's what Tsunade told me and said that I was good enough in it to be trained in medical jutsu. Tenten mulled that over and she hated to admit it, but her chakra control was about average, her skills were always more in weapons. From what she could remember, Tsunade was not known to using weapons. Still, she would have liked some instruction from her idol, if only from pointers from someone of her experience. I think she's getting more depressed, Ino whispered to Sakura, who nodded. Well, I could ask her if you can meet her, I'm sure she would be up to it. Tenten's mood brightened instantly as her eyes seemed to have a gleam in them. Really? You would really do that? Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you can pull this off, you'll be my best friend for life. Here I thought I was her best friend, Ino muttered to herself, watching as Tenten was hugging Sakura very tightly. It was kind of funny seeing the older girl like this, as she didn't know much about Tenten, but as far as she could tell, the girl was alright. So how come Sasuke-kun didn't show up? Ino looked around, hoping that the boy was just going to be a little late. He's kind of busy. Sakura knew that he most likely just wanted to be left alone for a bit. After the mission, when they had learned that Itachi had been here, must have brought back a lot of unpleasant memories, but she was still worried about him. She was going to see him later and hope he was better. He's just trying to perfect a new jutsu that he learned while on the mission is all. Sakura supplied the lie. She didn't like doing it, but sometimes you just had to at times. Well, I'm sure he'll get it down in no time, Ino smiled happily. He's the best after all, and I don't think there is anything he can't do. Well, I don't know about that, Tenten frowned slightly. I mean, Neji is pretty good too. Neji looks nice and all, but don't you find that long hair kind of girly? Ino asked. I like my men with a shorter hair, to be honest. I think his hair looks just fine, Tenten huffed before blushing as she realized how that sounded. Not that I noticed. Ino got a bit of an evil-looking glint in her eyes. She thought she picked up on something juicy. Oh ho, do I detect something going on with you and Neji? No, you don't, Tenten said even sterner, yet she seemed to blush even more. Sakura rolled her eyes. The girl wasn't very honest, and now Ino was going to pester her all day about this. She just hoped the girl could survive Ino when she wanted the good gossip. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.